Good to chair. Vice chair.
I suppose I am. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's advisory design panel meeting. I'll start by acknowledging we're on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. And our second agenda item here is to adopt today's agenda. Are there any modifications? I don't see Jessie. She's the first item.
I am Jessie for all intents.
Asia is Jessie. Okay, wonderful. So can anyone move adoption of today's agenda? Luke? Second. Beth, great. Okay. All in favor? Everyone, I'm sure. Yep, wonderful. Okay, adopted. So then we have some upcoming some previous minutes from the October 17th design panel. For comment there, if anyone's got any comments. Hearing none, move to adopt those. First from, didn't read them. And you read them. Beth read them, great. That's a first and a seconded from anyone else. I'm not seeing any hands, but I'll second it myself and all in favor. Wonderful. Okay, that is the simple stuff done. Now introducing the business item, which is an advisory design panel introduction and Q&A by not Jessie Fletcher.
Thank
Asia.
you.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name's Asia Philp. I'm a planner with the district here, and I'm filling in for our manager, Jessie Fletcher. I'm going to share a really quick presentation, and some of this may be familiar to those who have been on the panel for a while, and hopefully will be useful for new folks joining. Did I get the screens mixed up? Thank you. Amazing. All right. So for our new folks on the panel, we're going to cover your roles and responsibilities. They're not numerous, but they're important to us. So you've got three main responsibilities. The primary role is to advise us on development proposals during application review. So that's the lion's share of what you guys will be doing. I will do another slide on the details of that. We will sometimes come to the panel for your advice on policies that we're working on, stuff that is related to development in the town, form and character, anything related to stuff like viewscapes, shadow studies, things such as that we can bring. And also sometimes we seek your advice on municipal projects. So just a reminder to the panel, you have no approval authority, but your comments do hold water with us. And if you need a refresher or for the new panel members, I do encourage you to review. We have a bylaw for ADP, and it outlines what you guys do and your scope and how meetings run. It's fascinating. I encourage you to review that bylaw. So on your primary role, basically what we want to hear from you is a focus on our development permit area guidelines and whether a proposal is in conformance and is meeting the guidelines. These guidelines cover like a broad range of design related things. We like to focus on the exterior of the building. We generally don't talk about interior unit layout unless it's relevant from an accessibility standpoint. Building siting size, massing, how it relates to the adjacent buildings, how it relates to the larger context of whatever neighborhood it's going into, details on materials and color, definitely stuff like accessibility and connectivity and pedestrian related things, cyclist aspects, all of that stuff. We love to hear from you guys. Landscape for the BCSL, I don't know the acronym, our landscaper designers on the panel focus on the landscaping and sustainability and energy efficiency. a lot of stuff as it relates to step code and I guess best practices around energy efficiency. Okay, and how do we see this play out? Well, it gets messy, basically. So our guidelines are not perfect. They can't address every situation. A lot of them are quite general best practices in the design world and SEPTED and things like that. A lot of it's very subjective about what applies and doesn't apply and to what extent. Oftentimes, developments will come where it doesn't necessarily directly meet the guideline, but that could be because of constraints having to do with the site, like a very small site where they're not able to address certain guidelines. And then it also gets messy sometimes because our guidelines are not necessarily perfectly aligned with our zoning code and stuff like the flood hazard that we always have to deal with in our town. So to adapt to this messiness, we think good practice is to try to meet the objectives. So every development permit area has overarching objectives, to use kind of your common sense judgment on a lot of stuff and to be adaptable and flexible. We could talk about this forever, but it's usually a site-specific basis, and I'll defer to some of our experienced panel members to navigate and lead some of our newer members through this messiness. So that's it. I'd say maybe if any of the new panel members have questions, let's maybe do 5 minutes, and then if there's broader topics, we can push that to the roundtable. Carlos, if you're able to capture, if anything comes up related to that, we can come back to it at the end of the meeting. But for those new panel members, we'll stop the presentation and we can have you guys raise your hands or just feel free to turn on your microphone if you have anything.
Hi.
Hi.
Celso here. So in one of the projects of on today's agenda, I felt that there's some material missing, and I'm not sure if it's available, was not sent to us. Once we receive the agenda and all the material, can we send you guys any email asking for potential additional information that will help us? Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, certainly. That's a great question. You can send it to planningnew@squamish.ca or just planning@squamish.ca. It'll then get directed to the right planner on the file and we'll try to get you the information, but we'll circulate it to the whole ADP. Good question, though. Michael, I can see you're talking, but we can't hear you. Worst case, if it's quick, it can go into the chat while you try to sort it out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to actually check my microphone, so now I've completed that. Thank you.
Great. Do you have a question, or was this just a mic check?
Just a mic check.
Got it. Okay. All right. Any last questions? Seeing none, let's move to the next item.
All right, thank you for that. Are you also Bryan today?
I'm also Bryan.
Okay, all right. Many hats. Okay, so we've got DP 590-43026 Second Avenue. And with that, Asia, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep this brief before I pass it on to the architect team. So, yep, this is on Second Avenue. It's proposed as a mixed-use development, 7 stories, commercial at grade, 39 market rental units going in above. I'll just highlight for the panel that they're asking for 3 variances, which staff are supportive of. One is a minor height increase to enable that 7th story. One is to minor decrease in the amount of employment space that's required in the C4 zone. And then there's a fairly significant parking reduction request to drop the residential parking from 39 stalls to 29 stalls, which staff are supporting, being that it's a market rental in perpetuity proposal. The main thing that staff would like ADP to address is the colors that the architect has selected for their exterior finishes. Staff are of the opinion that it's quite dark and cold looking, and we're looking for something that better meets the design guideline that speaks to color. And then we're also looking for opportunities to further activate the mid-block connection area. That mid-block is just showing, I think, the lobby entranceway to the building, and then it's just wall area after that, no fenestration or anything. So those are the two clutch things we would like the panel to address. There's some others guidelines that are not met that you guys can review quickly. They're all listed in attachment 1 to the staff report, where it highlights some of the other aspects, but definitely we'd love your comment on that. I'm going to turn it over to the architect. We'll just do a quick seat shuffle here. Steve, come on up.
In terms of shuffling back and forth, just the cursor keys and slides.
Yeah. So full screen. Let's just confirm.
And down maybe?
Might be slow. Could we get out of full screen and we'll just run it out of the Acrobat?
Oh, okay. Didn't like that.
Okay. Pausing
It's
for
kind of-
pausing for technical difficulties. Wouldn't be the first time.
It's a fairly meaty file.
Might be a little bit.
I think let's try that.
Yeah, it's not full screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's not too
Same
bad.
thing in terms of
Yeah.
cursor keys back and forth. No. There. Okay.
You can do that. And then this shows up your mouse.
Oh, okay. To highlight
Okay.
these. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, 10 minutes.
Certainly, I can do that. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for allowing us to speak today. My name is Steve Akers. I'm with Stewart Howard Architects. The principal of the firm was not able to be here today. However, I am the lead design architect on the project, so I am best to speak to it. With me today is Pat Campbell. She will be the landscape consultant for this job, and will speak to the landscape component of this project. Just a brief overview, as we've, I believe Aja has already spoken to. Here's a list of the team members as well, just to let you know that we have gone through a flood hazard report, a wildlife hazard report, as well as an invasive species report, which are available on file. Going through some of the bigger components in here in terms of the development permit areas and zoning bylaw and official community plan. We see here that, there's a focus on the downtown area is very much a focus of the Squamish community, and they're looking for street level commercial and retail services. This is a C4 zone, 20-meter max in height, with a 0 lot line at front and 3.5 meters at the back. From the official community plan, there's definitely a number of comments on there that, there's a diverse and affordable housing is what they're after, and that the downtown Squamish area is a very vibrant part of the Squamish, looking for more shopping commercial areas. In terms of the site context, we can see that it's on the southeast side of 2nd Avenue, and that we're sandwiched in between two projects that I think one is just finished and the other is definitely under construction as we speak. So to the south is 1365 Victoria. I'm sure that all the panel is very familiar with this one, as well as the Amaji that's just being built right now at 38044, just to the north. Getting into the development statistics. So as Aja had mentioned, this will be a 7-story mixed-use development. We do show street level pedestrian oriented CRUs. These are double height spaces with approximately 4,100 square feet of space. As mentioned, 39 secured rental in perpetuity above the 5 floors. And there's both a indoor and outdoor amenity space on the 3rd floor, which we will take a look at further in the line. There is a mid-block connection that we need to be aware of that was spoken about as well. This is a unique opportunity and definitely an opportunity for us to provide an architectural expression. And we were asked for a 2.5 meter setback with also a 1.5 meter setback available at the exit stair. However, that cannot come down right to the floor, but to the 2nd story. So we've adhered to that as well. So I've spoken about that the 2 projects that either have just finished or just under construction. The 1365 is a 6-story, and I believe the 3844 will be a 7-story that's right beside us under construction right now. Taking a look at the design description in more detail, you can see we've got quite a bit of bold massing at the street level, and that pertains more closely to what's happening at the corner at 1365 Victoria, and then more of an articulated kind of peeled material skin that's happening more closer to the 3844. And that's just a recognition and response to the massing that's happening with those 2 projects, and that's why that has gone the direction we have, as well as the bold massing that's happening above. We've created this gateway sense is what we're after, and then we've got this carved series of balconies that are happening, addressing that gateway as well. The indoor and outdoor amenity spaces, you'll see that on the 3rd floor is the bottom rendering. So there's both a covered space as well as urban agricultural planters, which landscape will speak to shortly, as well as seating for social connections. Getting into some of the materials, you'll see on the main floor where it's more some bold massing closer to Victoria Street. We're proposing a dimension stone cladding in that location. And then further closer to the Imagi, it will be more of a peeled look. So it's going to be more of a window wall with facing of metal panel. Up above, we've got materials that are kind of a box rib material that is like a metal panel with undulations in it. It's more of a charcoal color. Some of the recesses will be like an Aspire fiber cement material, very light in color, a polar white. And some of the accents will be a high density fiber cement in a ruby in color, somewhere between ruby and terracotta. More about the building form and massing that we see here from the commercial street. So very much is a response to the 2 buildings that are under construction or had just been completed. And you'll also notice the roofscapes there. We're trying to show it kind of create some dynamic visual interest between the 2 roofscape heights. So we've got the dominant form further to our left, and then a recessed area on the other side, which creates some visual interest and entertainment. Something that's also really important that we discuss is the light penetration. So you'll see then the 2 renderings towards the bottom. We're very much aware that there needs to be a separation between the building that is under construction, or sorry, that's just been completed, and ourselves. There's quite a separation there, so that the light penetration does happen, as well as some articulated forms that are happening in the ruby color there. And then pretty much I'll just leave with the livability and sustainability that's happening with this project. And it's important to note that we will be meeting all of the typical standards that are now expected in Squamish. The building step code 3 for the commercial levels, step code 4 for the residential levels. That there will be electrical vehicle charging. There'll be 10 of them, so that will feature for the vast majority of spaces up there, and it'll certainly be future compatibility for all spaces. There will be adaptability to meet the 10% requirement, but it will be age in place adaptability for all units. Other points to highlight here is to be clear that even though it is 7-story, the shadows cast here do not impact in any way any parks nearby. I realize my time is short, so I'll go through this quite briefly. Again, a series of unit plans and floor plans just to explain what we're up to in terms of the commercial levels and residential levels. You'll see on your bottom left explanations of the amenity spaces, both indoor and outdoor. On the elevation side, there has been a number of comments mentioning that it does feel a little bit dark. We did take this to heart, and something I did want to reveal that is somewhat new that has not been presented before. The elevations here that has to deal with the mid-block connection, you will see that we've lightened these canvas panels that we're suggesting where potential artwork could go as a potential lightning area to allow things to flow a little better and have a little more of a lighter color. So we do have renderings of that to explain. There's typical sections, and I'll briefly hand it over to Pat to speak of the landscape component.
All right, this is a third building that we've worked on in this mid-block location along 2nd Street. The mid-block crosswalk is in the right in front of Amaji 1 and Amaji 2, which is the next building to the east. So the mid-block walkway, while not aligned with that mid-block crosswalk, does provide a clear and safe passage from the street to the lane. It, on the Amaji 2 site, which is immediately adjacent to it, it is not landscaped along that edge. On this project, we have a green edge all along the building face so that it's an evergreen hedge with vine and some perennials at the base of that. So it is enlivened with that. There are 2 benches along that edge as well as that lobby entrance. There is on the adjacent building also a doorway onto that walkway. The actual streetscape has evolved to be really the standard, the district standard for this street. So it's got a paving pattern that provides texture and color on that face as well. The building has a canopy along the building edge. There's a continuous landscape edge along the curb that's established by the guidelines that provides continuous soil channel for those street trees. We will work with the district to see what those street trees are. Immediately to our east, there is an elm tree and 2 cherry trees planned for that edge. But anyway, we will work with that and we'll provide whatever the tree requires, the type of tree requires as far as soil volume. Currently, it does meet the 10 meter per tree standard for a mid-sized, mid-canopy sized tree. There's also a couple of trees within the walkway. There's a plant, middle of that walkway, there's a planter on the north side and on the south side. But just ground level, 2 foot high, perennials, native, everything is drought tolerant and trying to accentuate native pollinators and some habitat. Along the south face is 2 accesses into the parkade. There's landscape adjacent to that wall as well. There's also on the 3rd floor, which maybe we can go to the next drawing.
Yep.
Have planters both on the northwest, and I'm calling it Project North, but it is obviously askew, as you'll see the north arrow there, but I'm calling north the top of the page, the south bottom of the page. So individual people's patios on the north side with trees and a integrated planter into the building. On the south side is the amenity area, and there is 3 sort of areas that have been developed. The gardening area is on the west. A midsection is a lounge area it's furnished with couches and tables and a covered area, and then there's a dining area on the east. Again, along the perimeter, it's all integrated with the building, so it's 42 inches high. We have a trailing native plant along that edge, which will also spill over onto the mid-block walkway side as well as on the lane side. So the amenity area itself, that does have planters, it has a composter, it has a work table, a bench, all in that gardening area, tables in the dining area, and I think I can just leave it there. I don't think there's anything too vital that I missed.
Thanks, Pat. I just want to end with, thank us to speak today. And we fully understand that planning has not provided full support for this project this time. However, we're just asking for the consideration of your support, and that we will continue to work with planning on the goal of getting this moving forward and getting it developed for more housing within Squamish. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just for the newer members, as a reminder, we'll do a round of questions first. So only questions, please. And then we'll get into comments in that same order. Beth, how about you start us off? Sorry.
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the clarity. Thank you for the mic reminder. I do have a few questions. Mostly from the policy context. I wanted to hear your thoughts about, in particular, how your approach to the design reflects and celebrates what's unique and special about Squamish. And I'd also like to hear, in the same context, how it enhances connectivity at the site, block, and street levels. Thank you.
Okay. In terms of uniqueness, I think what we were trying to achieve with this one is to deal with that mid-block connection. So that was a big component of it. So there's the idea of a gateway concept. I might be able to go back to a previous page so that we can really focus on it.
Sure.
So here on the second photo, or the second rendering that you see here, this in my opinion is really what sells this project, is the idea of this reaction to a gateway, and that carved image, and how it as a form relates to the elements below. I think that's what really sells this project, both in terms of materiality, being quite bold. I like the fact that there's stone happening on the first and second floor that reacts very well to a Victoria Street project, and the fact that it peels back as it relates more to the articulate things that are happening with the Imaji 2. I think that's important to mention. What in the second question, second part of your question?
I think you may have touched upon it, but let me just double back. That was about your approach to the enhancement of connectivity at the site and block and street levels.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to address the fact that we're well aware that they would like to see a little bit more glazing and activation happening along that side. And I think what we're trying to do is strike a balance between, what the property owners and developers are looking to do with this project, and recognizing, there perhaps is limits of where we can place everything in here. So if you take a look at the main floor and second floor of this project, and where we're noting, all the components that go into this, right? We've got garbage and bicycle storage, vehicles. You have to find a balance between where this all goes. So it was our idea that it was more important to provide a second floor of having that double height space for the commercial street front, rather than wrapping it around, and that the utility services that are necessary for this, in terms of providing the parking, the bikes, all those sorts of things, there's quite a bit of our garbage area that has to happen all the back there as well. It's about finding that balance for us, and the viability of the project as well. If we wrap this around, can this be leasable? Is this all possible? So this is what we felt was the best fit in terms of our proposal forward.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all, Beth?
I do have one follow-up question, actually, since you offered. You mentioned that you wanted to highlight or I guess make sure that you were able to accommodate the importance of the double height street frontage. Could you speak a bit more about that as well, please?
They would like to see commercial retail units happening on the main floor, and that the second floor potentially could be employable area as well, but more on the office administration type level. So we took that to marketing and what we could really do with this, and recognizing that there are, there are physical limitations of the amount of height, which we are already a little bit over, and we've seemed to be staff seem to be amenable to that variance. But it really just, it wasn't working in terms of the amount of height that was available, nor in terms of meeting some of the elevations that are happening with the adjacent two projects of max height of the second floor. So looking at that, we thought, well, what happens if we just turn this into a double height space with mezzanine behind? And this meets, from a form point of view, still meets that same goal, but potentially provides these spaces as a better leasability and better natural light penetration, better quality of I guess, working in those spaces. That's what we're after. Speaking more to, if I may just add one more point, you were mentioning about the point of specific character to Squamish. I think it's important to note in terms of coloration, so that we've got both a dark and a light, but also there's quite a bit of accent here with that ruby high density material. I think that speaks very much to Squamish in terms of these bright punches of accent color that really speak, that you're seeing quite a bit of that, and definitely up in the Squamish area. It's becoming a kind of a new contemporary language that's specific to Squamish.
Thank you. Thanks for doubling back on that one as well.
Luke?
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks for the presentation. Just building off like what Beth was speaking to you about, given that like the rationale you just gave for the two-story commercial, like what was your approach, and can you walk me through more of the concept as to how the building appropriates itself to the street scale and like to the human scale and the entry and the sense of arrival?
Okay. Typically when we're designing spaces for the streetscape, we tend to try to go for somewhere between 12 and 16 feet. And then whatever's above available for that, for the second floor, it pushes beyond that, and it's nice to have another 10 to 12 feet. We're quite limited here in order to achieve the residential areas above. But this seemed to be a comfortable number to work with that fits well with both the Imaji and the 1365 Victoria. So we wanted to maintain a two-story form and concept for this. I think that fits well and manages well with in terms of fitting the area. I think it would look a little bit funny if you brought this down to just one level. So I think the two-story space kind of fits well in that area. And then you also have the outdoor canopy space that kind of splits the two. There may be some better renderings for that I can bring up. Yeah, you can see that to the far right there. So even in this case, we tried to show a little bit more kind of pops of color where it would marry that same ruby patina color, and that there'd be a separation between the two sets of canopies.
Thanks. Can you speak to the materiality as well of the canopies and the storefront design?
The canopies that we're proposing here would be a metal frame and glazed above, to allow, again, that light penetration during the darker days of Squamish. And then the canopy that would be a lighter color, again, these would be painted specifically to these colors to match the other components that they're related to, but they'd definitely be a metal frame and glazed panel.
Thanks. Okay, just moving up the building, in the initial sort of schematic and massing phases, what was the driving concept behind the massing itself that you arrived at? So given that you've got the volume on that north side, sorry, I'm just orientating myself, and then there's varied massing forms in general, like, can you speak to that?
So this was a marriage between creating a set of forms that represents a gateway to the mid-block connection, but also marrying that with a series of recesses that need to happen in order to match the policy of pulling back that after the I guess the third floor. So that's somewhat policy driven, but we've pushed against that a little bit in terms of how it reacts to the corner, and we like the proportions that are happening in this case of how those recesses work relative to, I guess, the juxtaposition of the bold massing that's happening at the corner. And you'll see on the reverse side that whether you're walking down the mid-block connection from either side, the building is essentially mirrored on both sides. So you have that same enjoyment of the proportions. As you move further to the 1365 Victoria's building side, you'll see there's kind of a representation of a smaller form that has got that punch of ruby color, and that is a proportional reflection of the larger massing happening at the corner.
Okay, thank you. My last one, I guess, would be like, given the choice of the design approach for the commercial, is there a lighting design strategy of how that would be applied, given there's glass in the canopies? Like, what's the soffit lighting going to look like, and just general street lighting?
We would certainly work with planning in terms of working with the policy that they have to ensure that it meets that. But we're quite open in terms of once we develop a full team of consultants, they would help us find the right lighting that would be appropriate for this. We're very much aware of sustainability requirements in terms of wildlife as well.
I can speak that generally. According to the standard, the light standards occur in the planting beds along the street.
Mm-hmm.
So street trees happen in tree gates where there's planters. In the middle of the planters, there would be the standard light standard that the district will establish. Along the walkway, the mid-block walkway, we've got lighting integrated with the building. So rather than having standards themselves, they're hung off the building. So those have not been specifically designed, but that's the intent.
Okay. I think the intent is that a lot of it would be down lighting and very much focused on the pedestrian experience.
Yeah.
Rather than anything up lighting or trying to showcase the building. That's not the intent here. And you will notice in a couple of the renderings, if you go through the set, we do have recessed lighting within the soffit areas of the balconies. Yep. So you get the twofold experience of bedding from the light being full downward, as well as in the summer months when you want to control natural lighting coming in, you've got that benefit.
Thanks. I'll leave my questions there, Carlos, for now. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. And then, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Meal.
That was right. Thank you. I'm curious about, sorry if I missed this, but the Imachi building to the north, it's in, what phase is it in right now? Or what's the status?
G2, which is to the east or northeast, is under construction currently.
Okay, I just wanted to understand kind of that interface, what if there's CRUs proposed there?
It's the same sort of program, and it's commercial at grade and residential above.
And at the mid-block connection,
it has one exit onto the mid-block walkway, one doorway.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you. Celso?
Thank you all. Mia pretty much asked all the questions I had. And I think we're in the question period, right? So when the adjacent building came to planning, there was only, just to confirm, it's a solid wall, 2 levels high, with only one door along this connector.
Well, and then there's a little notch at the street corner. There is some windows that turn the corner right at the northwest corner.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Was he asking that question of Amaji 2 or of this development?
I think it was Amaji too, but I
Amaji.
don't know if they can hear you, Asia. Are you mic'd up over there?
Can you tell them that Amaji 2 has CRUs off fronting the mid-block?
Right. So, do you have a site plan of Amaji 2 in there that you can share?
I
I
do
know
have a
there's kind of an
site plan,
outline
I
of
don't
it, but
know
I guess
if
there
I
are
see
some mid-block commercial spaces in the Amaji 2, which is the adjacent building that is under construction presently.
Well, right here, that's where the door.
Oh, okay. Yeah, unfortunately, this is the best I have is just showing an outline of that. But I do recognize that, yes, I think there is some glazing that does head, I guess in this case, further east than we do. But it's more like 1/3 of the building that I recall. It's not like it's a full length of the building. They do extend a little bit further than we do.
Okay, if I could ask planning if there's a chance until we actually get to the comment stage of the review of this project, that if we could see how that elevation on the neighbor building looks like, that would be much appreciated. Those were my questions. I'll get back on the comment session.
Great, thank you. Michael, you're next up.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm curious, thank you for showing the soil volumes for the trees. What was the reason for switching from soil cells along second to the structural soil in the mid-block connector?
Switching, what was the reason for switching to structural soil?
Yeah,
Because we have the room in order to do that, and I think it's always preferred to do it in structural soil rather than soil cells. I think it's better to have a greater volume of material rather than pure soil. That structural soil actually works better than soil cells to support trees. Trees don't need entirely soil. What they need is the room to spread their roots. And in Squamish in particular, it's evidenced by the trees along on the mountainside. They grow in fractured rock, and they're quite happy to grow in fractured rock. So when you dig up structural soil, if there were some amendment to that, it is actually a lot easier to do it. It's a material that can be taken out, put back. You're not creating plastic garbage for the future. It's a preferred material.
okay, thank you. And with the planting beds in the mid-block connector, are they involved in any of the stormwater drainage of that, or how is the mid-block connector draining?
It is to some degree, but no, it is not part of the stormwater management, other than some of the water will go to those beds.
And is the mid-block
there-
connector, sorry, go ahead.
I'm not sure how it's where the stormwater goes.
Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot of engineering on that project as well. I know there is servicing happening at the lane.
Yeah.
In terms of stormwater, I suspect it would go in that direction. We'd have to speak to engineering.
But it's not part of the stormwater management, no.
Okay. With Amaji 2 and this, so Amaji 2 is constructing half of the mid-block connector, and then
Yes.
this will, okay. I guess I'd be curious to know how the stormwater management is being coordinated in here and who will be responsible for that, which way things will be draining, if it's actually going to be draining to the lane in the street, or if there's going to be area drains within the mid-block connector. Has that been coordinated at all? Or?
Yeah, so district engineering will coordinate all the stormwater across that whole street, and this developer will be responsible for any upgrades that are needed if they are over capacity for the storm.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And then I think another question I had was if you can just explain sort of the planting rationale in the mid-block connector, sort of what things you considered when selecting the plants.
The rationale, okay. Well, in the planters in the middle, we've got we want to keep it low, so it's mostly natives. It's got ferns and I can't remember, ferns and anyway, all low. It's got some kinnikinick, some on the south, it's got some lavender, it's got some pollinating plants. On the north, the pollinators are the fuchsia, hardy fuchsia. Along the west side of we're trying to have a green, continuous green. So we've got a yew hedge with, again, the repeat of the fuchsia at the base for pollinators. And we've got the more shade tolerant vine going up the wall, kinnikinick coming down from the third floor, trailing over, providing habitat. We're really trying to do a mix of native and pollinators and habitat plants.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Okay, I don't know what it is about me, but so a mezzanine isn't technically a story though, right?
That's true.
So is it really a 6-story building that has a double height space with a mezzanine?
At part of the building, yes, but at the parkade level, you would have a full story.
So with a 2-story parkade at the back, but it's not going to trigger, like if you go over 6 stories, you trigger a change in the building code.
No, in terms of the building code, what we do have to adhere to is to make sure that the 7th floor does not go above 18 meters above average grade or existing grade directly adjacent to the building. That's for emergency services to access.
Yes. Okay.
So that would be the most important. Now, to be fair, the limits of the building code is to 6-story, but we would have to submit an alternative solution. So we've already hired a certified professional to help us with that process. And my understanding is that has already been completed for the building next door. So we understand that the District of Squamish already acknowledges that 7-story is possible, provided the 7th story is kept at 18 meters.
Right. Okay. Did you ever look at extending the parkade on the 2nd level in lieu of the mezzanine?
We did. It's extremely inefficient because of the way we bring up the ramp to make that work. In talks with planning, they made it clear to us that it was really important for us to consider an office area as a 2nd floor to increase the employable area. So we got the impression that maintaining that 2nd floor space instead of just a single floor space was more important than spreading the building larger on the 2nd floor. I recognize that that's what the Imaji 2 did. So we realized the possibility of that happening. We went with this direction based on responses from planning.
Okay. And then did you consult with Squamish Nation for the art pieces that you displayed on?
We did not. We do have a note on that page that recognizes that, these are our proposals only, and these potentially are not recognized by the Squamish Nation. So we apologize if there's any disrespect there. But again, we're just suggesting these images as a potential opportunity for art to be displayed.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Open up to any last minute questions from the panel. Yeah, Celso?
So I was going to comment on that later on, but I see that the proponent brought some suggestions to mitigate some issues that were not submitted with the development permit. How is the city seeing these as being presented at the ADP only, and how should we consider that?
Great question, Celso. So this isn't the first time that this happens where new information is presented at the last minute to the ADP, and generally planning just takes it in stride and we take it away and do a thorough review post ADP. Okay.
Okay.
Kerry has the Imaji 2 plans.
Sweet.
So if you guys are keen to see what their mid-block portion looks like, we can fire it up.
Fire it up.
Okay.
Fire it up.
Maybe while we're doing that, I did have one more question. Was a green wall or trellis structure considered on the east side of the building at all? The laneway?
Can you repeat that?
Oh, sorry. Yes, it was considered and rejected by our client.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Hamilton. I'm a planner at the district. I also was the planner on the Emoji 2 file and was listening in when there were some questions. So helping Asia out at the moment. I'm just going to preface to say that there have been some changes to this with construction, and there's some small DP amendments to this design, but essentially this will give you a bit of what was approved at development permit for the Emoji 2 building. And I will just show you two. This is the site plan version. There have been some minor amendments, I believe, to reduce this washroom space, but the glazing here does remain. And you can kind of see there's glazing, some entranceways for an exit, as well as a garbage and an entrance for the garbage on the mid-block. And then the other component I can show you is this is kind of their mid-block package that was submitted with the development permit. You can see there's some signage, glazing, there's some space for some seating, and then they had proposed a kind of interactive art piece, which is kind of where people can like write on a chalk wall component to this design.
Kerry, is that tree that's there? Did they just put the tree in the other side of the street that's not there, or is that their tree they're putting in?
Yeah, it's certainly a bit of a complex having to do one project, do one portion of it, and then another project do the other. The district has, you know, when Emoji came forward, we didn't really have a design. When this application has now come forward, we do. We've been working through our mid-blocks designs, and the intention is to have trees at the front area so that there's some opportunities that light can get into those trees, and then we wouldn't have any kind of trees in the middle, and then potentially a tree at the laneway side, which I believe is reflective of your drawing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
May I ask a question of the district? Yeah. On that note, I just wanted to clarify. So to clarify, at present, there's no sort of official design guideline for mid-block connectivity with the district?
There.
Yes. There are design guidelines?
Yeah, so DPA 6 does have guidelines around how to activate your mid-block, how to design the mid-block, and all we've done, what we're speaking to now is actually getting into the nitty-gritty civil design details of how to actually execute that. But we do have development permit guidelines that speak to mid-block activation, which we are following.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we'll get into comments now from the panel in the same order. So Beth, please kick it off.
Thanks, Carlos. I think I'm just going to follow up on that line of questioning that I started really about mid-block connection in my comments as well. I think there's a reason that lots of people are mentioning the mid-block connection in this discussion, and I think it's because it's quite important. I think the mid-block connection has the potential to, you know, either really be a gift to the urban kind of environment and the streetscape if it's treated, you know, with sensitivity. And I also think it's possible for it to sort of detract a little bit as well if it's not elevated. The potential for it to kind of become a dark corner, kind of a place where there's no real purpose, but it draws people in, and maybe it's a conflict with traffic and these sort of issues. So I think general roundtable comment would be that it would be nice to see that elevation of the building and that connection really elevated in stature and given a bit more of a public realm treatment. And so thank you for showing the opposite building, because I think that's really important too, because it really does create the whole context, you know, for better or for worse, but what's happening across the other side of the lane. So that's my first initial comment. And I think just, you that one overrode my thoughts as we were moving into my turn to speak here, but I did have some comments previously that I noted when I was reviewing the application package and looking at what the district was hoping to have us speak to. The other one being the material palette, the colors. I don't personally see there being too much of an issue with the color palette. It really does respond, as I drove down Second today, it responds to the buildings on either side. So I'm not really inclined to suggest maybe that the colors need to change or the materials need to change in particular. I think if the district would like to see some more color or vibrancy sort of added to the package, there could be an opportunity at the streetscape level through art and through landscaping to kind of turn up the volume a little bit on the color if we wanted to add some accents in that context. And I think really, yeah, actually for now that wraps up my comments, especially for the issues that the district wanted to have us speak to for form and character. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Luke?
Thanks, Carlos. Yeah, I will echo Beth's comment there on the activation of that through block and the corner there. And I'll further it by speaking to I think it's lacking activation in that corner. There's been a decision to locate the entrance to the building there. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily define itself as an entry architecturally speaking. I mean, I understand there it's like below the massing, and I can totally see how that was a decision that was made, but I don't think that level of articulation actually speaks to the activation of the streetscape, and that's also speaking to the same guideline of the human scale there. Speaking to like the sense of Squamish, there's like the Squamish vernacular, but then there's also like, I think that guideline can also be interpreted as the local context, given that Squamish is not an old town, it's developing and it's new and it's defining its vernacular. I'm concerned, like when I walk down Second, I'm getting concerned because we have the Aegean, Milagro, this new development, the next one, Imagi 2, and every single one is unique, and that's fine. However, I feel the mass needs to respond in some way, and there's somewhat of a disconnection between the architectural or the cohesiveness along the streetscape. So in terms of the massing of the building, I think the articulation is very successful. However, I would like to see a little bit, or I would advise the proponent to consider it a bit more in a way that it could be refined. I think it's almost too varied, and that is somewhat of a problem with the Imagi 2. I think it's so varied that it becomes a bit too busy, and it could almost be pared back a little bit. To bring that into the color palette I think is great. The introduction of that third color pop, I think once that's been further refined, it can actually, I mean, that would be great to see like the grays and the blacks speak with the red, and like as long as that rationale and that concept is brought together like cleanly, I think that could be a really nice piece. I see how the black volume speaks to the Aegean in some way, shape, or form, and that really helps it to turn the corner. I think that's quite successful. But again, I think that is like the trick to making that corner really activate and work. Okay. And then again, to the materials, I'd caution the use of folded metal profiles. It really comes down to the detailing and the through wall flashings. They need to be really carefully considered when it gets to the detail stage, especially if it's in combination with a fiber cement panel. I applaud the use of hide and see fiber cement panel. I really think that is a great choice of material. It'll allow you to reduce the amounts of flashing and then really clean up that facade. I think that should be also considered through the detailing and the guardrails to ensure that like that doesn't get too busy. Speaking to like that detailing of the guardrails and the canopy, I think the canopy can also be maybe cleaned up a little bit. Maybe that is one of the things that's confusing that sense of scale, the glass and the proportions of the steel members. I think the proponent should also look into that a little bit. Regarding lighting, and as we move down the through block connection, I think the proponent should consider safety and security of those that walk down that alleyway. really like support the use of through block connections. However, they should be caution should be given to ensure that they're feel like safe places to walk, especially as these places develop and we become more of an urbanized area. And then again, yeah, the architectural strategy, I agree, like you can develop that when a lighting consultant comes on. However, that should be an integral part of the architectural design. And you have to make, as you're moving forwards with that design development, consider how the lighting can be included on that facade. Okay, thanks.
Thanks so much, Mio.
Hi, thank you, and thank you to the previous speakers for excellent comments. I probably will be trying not to be too redundant about those, but will echo that, yeah, the mid-block connection does seem like a potentially very special place if treated right, and that activation would be a critical element of that. So yeah, I think somebody had mentioned like the potential of having CRUs more towards that side rather than having the lobby entrance there is a potential way to address that. And then I did really like the trees on either end. I think that'll be a nice sort of breadcrumbing of things. And and echoing others, lighting would be something, and safety that could really enhance the space as well and enhance the placemaking there. Potentially having uplights on the trees and some kind of lower lighting canopy or in-ground lighting that could, or paving colors or something special that kind of brings like a sense of discovery and placemaking there. Would be really exciting to see there. And yeah, I think that's all for me. So thank you for the presentation, and pass it on.
Thanks, Mio. Celso?
Yes, thank you. So I echo some of the comments made. Unfortunately, it's a general comment. I think us architects are trying to make buildings too complicated, and sometimes they become too busy. It's just suggestion to try to clean up a little bit, but I acknowledge that at this point, maybe there will be a huge impact on already planned suite layouts and whatnot. So just for future comments potentially. Saying that I have a problem with the darker metal panel there, I honestly don't, but I would recommend that you look into probably lightening up a little bit, even if it's a charcoal, but you know, toning it down a little bit or up, doesn't the way it goes. A little lighter, I think, will enhance a little bit the overall result. My main concern is, as everybody else, is the mid-block connector. So I have some comments that probably don't jive with the others. I understand the reason why even the guideline might call for trees where sun can actually penetrate and keep those trees alive, but I have a real concern, especially combined with the proposed banners that I see in some of the renderings for this project, that is going to create a really dark, very unattractive space for public, and I would even go beyond unattractive, unsafe. I'm glad to see that the neighbor building has, in my opinion, a very a good approach to providing not only activation but also light spilling into that mid-block connection, and the interactive thing. Sometimes we talk about the TikTok or Instagram moment, right? I think creating those kind of things that will attract people to actually come to this place, which is in some ways not attractive, is what make this mid-block connector successful. So I strongly suggest that the applicant go back and look into opportunities such as perforated metal panel, another form of fenestration, even if it's a shadow box or something like that, that could bring that a more light visually approach to those two first levels of the building. In terms of lighting also, I would suggest I didn't see any call up for lighting on the back lane, but I think that is equally important. So just going back on the location of the trees, I do agree with the fact that it's the potential only place where trees would survive within the length of that mid-block. But I have huge concerns that either is not going to inform public that actually there is a mid-block going, because by the time those canopies grow, it's probably going to block visually that connectivity opportunity. The other thing I saw, there's some inconsistency between the seating showed on the neighbor project and the seating shown on this project. I think Patricia is proposing some wood benches there, which if the case, in both cases actually, whether is that stone kind of block that the other project showed, or these wood benches, but I suggest that the city look for a conversation between both developers to actually create a consistency amongst that. In either way, or a combination thereof, there should be some deterrence for people not to be sleeping in this mid-block, which is not that difficult. And Patricia know what I'm talking about. So I'm not in favor of those banners. And I'm not going to comment on officially on the proposed artwork, but I think that's not the solution. I think we should look into finding a better solution to activate those two first floors. If I may, your garbage room is along the exterior wall on the first level, right? I'm just wondering if that couldn't be flipped and the garbage room go on the other direction, although I understand the impact on the pad mount transformer and crisscrossing with the access to the parquet, but maybe everything is flipped in order to potentially create better opportunities for a exterior wall, more transparent, more, even perforated matter, anything that could bring a little bit more light and visual penetration, right? Permeability in some ways, right? If you for that corner, I think there is. It's good that there's a retail proposed on the other building. I don't think necessarily something that could survive. So I'm not too keen on suggesting even that you think about a retail here. If there is opportunity for retail along this mid-block, I gotta tell, there's not gonna be much more than one person or one retailer interested to go in there. So if that space becomes successful, I think it's halfway if this building responds equally to creating a more interesting approach. My last comment is about the height of the, although I agree again with the proportionality of the canopy steel members and glass, but my major concern here is actually there is a last drawing here, I think on the architectural drawings, that call for this, the top of this canopy to be 11 feet and the bottom of the blade signs at 8. I think you're going to have problems with those heights. And maintaining really that vandalism and anything else. So I also don't have a clear understanding as to how you're connecting that canopy to your structural slab on level 2, and I understand those constraints, but I would strongly recommend that all that be raised a little bit, not talking about because it's whatever the signage bylaw allow you to, but I think those banners are extremely large for the proportion of the building, specifically being at 8 foot tall. Those are mainly my recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael.
Okay, I can appreciate the challenge in finding plant material for the mid-block connector. It's heavily shaded by the building on the north side, but I would recommend just reviewing the plant species that are selected, because I think some are a bit require a bit more sun, and it could be that I'm having a tough time seeing which species are located where. They're pretty faint in the drawing. And I think also the Parthenocissus with the Virginia creeper, I'm not sure it's going to do as well growing up the green screen on the north side. I think it would be better suited on the east side where we'll get some more sun. For the trees, I didn't ask this question, and I meant to, but just to consider what other tree species are along 2nd Avenue when selecting the elms there. And I know there is some hydro poles over, so make sure you consider the tree size with the overhead utility infrastructure. The pine, the columnar pine, I'd also maybe consider looking at a deciduous columnar species there. I found the columnar pines in town do not handle the wet snow very well. The branches droop and break, and maybe having a deciduous tree at the entrance there would allow more winter light in. There's also a strip of landscape. So at the laneway end of the mid-block connector, there's the planter in the mid-block connector, and then there's a strip of planting separating the car share vehicle parking space. I'd consider maybe removing that piece of landscaping and opening it up more, just more of a connection to the laneway, feeling a bit more open space. And I can see people wanting to cut around that corner a bit faster. Yeah, I think those were, another thing, maybe the coniferous trees on the laneway behind the PMT and behind the vehicle parking space. I think that species of tree is a little too, the green giant, the 3 green giant might be too big a tree for that space right up against the building. And I didn't see any soil volume calculations there either. I think, I know you said the client didn't want the green screen on the east side, but that might be a better approach to screening the walls there. And maybe also reference to wildlife or wildfire landscaping management bylaw, just for which species and setbacks from the building are allowed. I think that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. So briefly, thank you for that presentation. Yeah, I guess off the top, I don't know that I'm convinced by the ruby color choice. It just doesn't seem that bold to me. I think you kind of have an opportunity to go one of either ways. Like you've got the Aegean adjacent to the building, which has more of, I'd say, a refined color palette, like a bit muted, but at least some blacks and some grays and beiges. And then, I think you also have the opportunity to take that color and maybe go a bit more bold.
Okay.
And I'd recommend just reconsidering that if you're open to it. I'll caution you for placeholders of art in future. I'd suggest, it's awesome to want to work with Squamish Nation. And if you do, I really encourage you and your client to do that. There are processes to go through for that do take some time and some consideration. So like those should be started now, but maybe for placeholders, just kind of have something more art related than necessarily. We've had some other proponents come here and report to be doing things in conjunction with Squamish Nation when they work. So just as a caution. something to be aware of. On the district review table, it's when I went to like meets guidelines, not meets guidelines. I don't know if I agree so much. Like I think it says it doesn't really, it's not cohesive, but when I look across like the 3 buildings that it's adjacent to, I feel like it's fairly cohesive across those, like what's kind of the new standard for Second Avenue. I don't really see it out of scale with the human scale, particularly. Like I think that commercial frontage makes a lot of sense to me. You know, I'd consider looking at meeting the parking allocation by taking over some of that mezzanine space. I think it's really interesting mezzanine space. I think it's a harder product to lease and get your value out of it. And so I think you might be better served on a rental project to keep that parking and provide that parking. And already there's kind of not that much parking associated with commercial or none. So I would encourage you to look at that. It's a bit of a tangent, but I think the C4 zone is really challenging because of those employee requirements. And I don't really, as someone who has a site with a whole bunch of office space, I don't really agree with it, because what ends up happening is some pretty low value office space that has to get shoved into projects, and I think doesn't serve many. And I think it's far better to look at a really balanced project, especially in downtown, now that we have these coming online. And I guess more to that, I think the fact that your site and the adjacent site, which are fairly small on a development scale, have to be kind of burdened with that mid-block connector. I think there should be some recognition of that within the zoning and what it allows for. I think those mid-block connectors are challenging because you don't have that much space to deal with, and every kind of square foot matters on these projects. And yeah, I'll echo Luke's comments a bit on materiality and kind of busyness. And one product that came to mind is like, I think it's called Alchemy. It's LKME, but they do this really beautiful custom like corrugated metal and their mid-wall flashing. If you go on their website, it's really, really well done, like beautiful. So I think if that's the goal, I think you are going for a really high quality material palette. I think just some tweaks there could be really excellent, as opposed to just paying more for some products that adorn a building downtown. So yeah, that's all I've got for comments. Are there any other last bits before we go? If not, then we have a choice in front of us. And so I'll read out the recommendations. We as a group have to select one. So A, that advisory design panel supports the project as presented and does not need to see the project returned for further review. B, that advisory design panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations. C, that advisory design panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to resolve the following recommendations and return. Or D, that advisory design panel does not support the project as presented for the following reasons. So at this point, if anyone's feeling very strongly about one solution or the other, I welcome the thought.
If I may, due to the importance of these mid-block and significant improvements that, in my opinion, need to be made, I know it's a pain, but I would recommend C.
Okay, does anyone want to second that? Beth, for discussion there. Okay. Anyone have thoughts? I typically, my position on these things is it can be quite onerous to come back to ADP. And so unless it's fairly unremarkable, I tend to let staff or encourage staff to work with the proponent. That's my personal opinion, but.
Yeah, I'm between a BC right now. I agree with Carlos. It can be quite onerous to come back to ADP, and I acknowledge that, given also that this is a rental building and what they're trying to do. That if we do go with B as a team, I'd like to also just recommend that we provide some succinct comments to move forward with, if that's possible.
Anyone online have some thoughts on that one?
If I may, I can switch my position to B, as long as we actually, I don't know how much time we have here, but give very, agreed upon strategies that planning could review with the applicant to improve the mid-block.
Okay. Let's get a temperature check. So all those in favor of B, raise your hand. Under the conditions that we'll provide some thorough feedback. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think it sounds like we're okay with B. And then maybe what we'll do is just to go around real quick and hit try to be succinct, but just hit the key points that you'd want to see addressed here. And Beth, I'll let you start off.
Thanks. I think key points for me, for sure, mid-block connector, and in particular, increasing, some of the like public realm aspects, the safety aspects, getting more people in there, the Jane Jacobs effect. So that I think we should also chat a little bit with the district about as well. And then also addressing the materiality and color palette as sort of the other comments in the room.
Great. Luke, anything to add to that one?
Yeah, just I'm trying to provide this concisely. Consider the massing in relation to the neighboring building, and try and clean up that facade somewhat with consideration to the materiality and the color.
That was succinct. Well done. Mio, anything to add to that?
Nothing to add though. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Salzo?
Yeah, same thing. Maybe, just to add some, I don't know how to define that, visual permeability or whatever it is, between interior and exterior of the building to respond to the neighbor building. And I would insist in a consistency of street furnishing.
Great. Michael?
Yeah, consider the species selection in the mid-block connector for the level of shade that it will receive. And also consider the tree species in terms of the context with the space of the building and overhead utilities.
Great. I don't think I have anything to add to that. Asia, is that sufficient for your purposes in playing the role of Bryan? Great. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. And maybe I'll suggest a 5-minute recess to switch over to the next group. Maybe 6 or 5 now. We'll reconvene 3:30. Great.
Thank you.
I'll talk a little bit, Joseph.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Hopefully everyone's still back here or on their way. So third business item up here is DP 619 Redbridge Northlands at Scott Crescent. Just for the panelists remaining, we've got a hard stop in here at 4:30. So we're going to try and keep questions and comments concise so that we can wrap this up ahead of there. So with that, Kerry Hamilton with the District of Squamish, I will let you take it away.
Okay, wonderful. Do you want to wait for the last panelists or just because
They're here.
they're on? Okay. Wonderful. My name is Kerry Hamilton. I'm a planner at the District of Squamish, and I'm presenting to you today a development permit project for the Northlands of Redbridge. So in my report, there's a bit of history on the Redbridge project, but it's been around for many years and first had a rezoning in 2014. And has had subsequent rezonings in 2018. And they have had a development permit for the site in this image, kind of the blue area, which is the south site, and it's currently under construction right now. So this proposal today is for the north site, and this would conclude the development of the Redbridge development. And it is for 102 apartment units and 16 townhouse units. And I'll let the architect kind of go through the details of the building, but I wanted to highlight just a few things for today's meeting. Staff is kind of still completing their review for this project right now. So the intention is that staff are generally really supportive with the product that is presented, but we did have a few questions and areas to focus on, especially given that it's a really large project and there's lots of connectivity and different site connectivity, the district park on the frontage to consider. So I was hoping with my report that I could kind of focus in the comment today, and especially given we have limited amount of time, we are seeking kind of really specific feedback from the panel today around a few items. So one of them is just kind of general material and color. The south site had pops of red, a lot of wood elements at the ground floor, and some different colors proposed in this north site, and just want to get the panel's comments on that. The Scott Crescent frontage, and I think you can kind of see that on the image right there. So this is the parkade wall that was, the parkade is allowed to kind of extend quite close to the Scott Crescent. And so the architects are kind of, were challenged to kind of create a very a welcoming facade there, and want some comments from the panel around their design. We're also seeking some comments around the townhouse design, where they've kind of created some staggering and offsetting, and there's some dividing panels between them, and staff are a bit concerned around the look of those panels. And then we were seeking some comment around the ground floor of some of the of buildings 5 and 6. There's a laneway access at the rear of the site, and we just want to ensure that there's some thoughtful activation and some SEPDEB considerations at that ground level. There's also, and not to get too complex in it, and the intention of this this comment was just to highlight that there is a bit of a shift from the comprehensive development zone. And again, that was approved in 2014. And there's a bit of a shift in the massing and how they're presenting the last building on the north side versus with the ground floor units and the massing above. Staff are generally supportive of what they've done because they're showing a lot of variation with the building in the vertical plane. And originally it was kind of more variation on the horizontal plane with upper step back. But because this is a bit of a change and we'll have to call it out at council, kind of just want the panel's opinions around that. And lastly, we want some comments around, I did include the district park that's proposed in here. It's more of a district park that's for a walkway, kind of recreational pathway area with riparian focus, so a protection of the foreshore along the Mamquem Blind Channel.
However, there was some requirement from council back in the day that they wanted to see some play activation in there, and specifically a child's play area. And it's actually to the point where it's written in the land development agreement that there's some activation. It's a really tight space. So we're hoping to use the panel to get some creative ideas. I mean, they proposed something initially, but would hope the panel can be solution oriented in finding some suggestions that work. And that's it. I'll pass it over to the applicant.
Need to click to talk. Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking time today. My name is Joe Kaplan, and behind me, Scott Kennedy, represent Cornerstone Architecture. To my left is
Dylan with Durante Krug. I'm the landscape architect.
So because we have limited time, I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can. Let's see here. There we go. So before I start talking about the project itself, I just want to talk about the inspiration behind it. This picture was taken just up the Mamcram Channel, looking south towards the site as it is. And this kind of was one part of our two parts of our inspiration for our material palette and color palette: blues, orange coppers, whites, grays, and also materials, wood, stone, locally sourced. And our next part of our inspiration came from the history from Squamish and the surrounding area, specifically the Redbridge that was actually built there in 1929. The reason it was red, I found out, was because they painted bridges red. So we wanted to draw on that history, and that's kind of what informed Redbridge South, a large part of it. A wood logging industry, like there was a lot of time and effort into that. And then moving now into Redbridge North, we thought we'd draw upon the same thing, especially Britannia mine and the copper mine that was there. So that'll come up later on. So just moving into the context, there's two sites for Redbridge itself, the south site, which is currently under construction, and the north site, which we're talking about today, both accessed off of Sea to Sky and Upper Scott Crescent. So an important part of this project was its connectivity to the existing trail landscape. So I can move my mouse here. Redbridge North, being the red shaded area, is accessed from Burgers and Fries Trail off to the east there, down a pathway, and kind of two major routes of access will be by looping along the north of the site and along the new waterfront trail down and towards the Sea to Sky Highway. The second being along the east of the site down towards Valley Cliff Trail connection and along Scott Crescent roundabout, again, along the new waterfront trail in front of Redbridge South and back up to the highway. So it does connect well into the existing trail landscape. That's something we thought about. And there are internal pathways that cut through Redbridge North site that I will talk about later as well. So zooming in again on the context plan, north is now to our right. Talking a bit about the existing Redbridge South site, we have 4 buildings for a total of 318 units, I believe. And the existing amenity there being the commercial area next to the highway, children's play area with a playground, teen lounge, and family room, and an amenity building, which includes a pool area with a hot tub, cold plunge, sauna, gym, lounge, maker lab, bike repair room, workshop, and red light therapy rooms. And those amenities will be accessible to the residents of the north site, which has 3 buildings located on it. Building 5 being 54 units, 4-story wood frame over 2-story parkade. Building 6 at the north here, which is 5-story wood frame and over half a story of concrete parkade, and building 7, the townhouses being 16 units. Lost my page here. 16 units, 3-story wood frame. So moving just quickly into the statistics, the distribution breakdown for the project, 118 units, 12% of those being 1 bed, 64% of them being 2 beds, and 24% of them being 3 beds. Zooming in again on the site plan, just talking again about those internal pathways. As you come down from Burgers and Fries Trail, you cut across and move east to west through the site. There's a curved staircase that meets you back onto the new waterfront trail here, and then cutting through the courtyard along that roundabout feature wall, which I'll talk about later, comes down and connects again to the waterfront trail. So again, just for context, east elevation on buildings 5 and 6. This is the behind building 5 on the east side of the site, the access road for visitor parking and accessible parking, as well as fire truck access. Showing that, I'm going to talk more in depth about those elevations later on. And then a section cutting through, just showing how we have a concrete podium where the parkade will be. And there is a smaller parkade level in building 5 here, and wood frame residential suites above. Now looking at the north down back through by buildings 5, 6, and 7, see the change in grade difference from the waterfront trail to the courtyard podium. And again, looking from the courtyard, looking from the roundabout on that feature wall, that concrete feature wall that we've addressed. Yeah, and then finally, just one last note here, the east to west section through buildings 5 and 7, the townhouses are stacked. There's a 2-bedroom townhouse and a 3-bedroom townhouse shown in the yellow and the pink. So first I'm going to speak about building 5. Before we get there though, I just want to talk quickly about the parkade. So you enter from the roundabout side, and there's 2 elevator cores, one in building 5 and one in building 6. So moving up 1 level above the parkade, this is the building 5's level 2. There's a small parking area, accessible parking, motorcycle parking, and visitor stalls. And there's quite a few units here with a generous outdoor space that opens up onto the courtyard that's shared from the back of the townhouses, a small lounge sitting area, and an area for parcel lockers and mail boxes as well. Moving up again, there's on building 5, there's a large concrete deck, serves again as large outdoor area for these units. And then moving up from levels 4 to 6, the deck is replaced with balconies outside of each unit. Moving into the material choices. So as mentioned earlier, we're using natural stone base as what the building is coming out of from that concrete podium. We're splitting the facade using the copper corrugated metal shown in the 1 here. Splitting up that facade, and then we're using accents of color. In building 5, we're using a cobblestone color, and in building 6, a blue, and building 7, a mix of all 3, including the pewter. And we're using cement panel in this case. Our finishes include a shingle, shown in building 6 later on, but in this case, it's a vertical reveal. I have a box here full of all the materials. Wish I could show you, but yeah, so just to kind of show off those different color palette, going for more muted tones and letting the copper, corrugated metal, and stone and steel speak for itself here. And then on the bottom right-hand corner of this west elevation of building 5, in that roundabout treated concrete wall, we're using a heat treated wood to use a silhouette of the surrounding local mountains. We use that here and then also in our signage. The bottom of this east elevation here, which I'll have a better image of coming up. And the north elevation has, so this is the north elevation of building 5. off of the visitor parking lot. So our entry lobby is located here. We're using the same corrugated metal in the ceiling and wall treatments. And again, for those large fins to break up those facades again. Yeah. And we got a lot of positive feedback from Redbridge South with the steel that we used for the balcony supports. So we're doing the same thing here. It's number 12, reference there. So there we are with that heat treated wood case for our Redbridge logo and the steel columns there. So moving on to building 6, before I jump into it, just want to talk quickly about what Kerry was addressing with the orientation of the building shape and sitting. We thought that this was a positive change for the fact that it opened up more of the back of the site so we could add more visitor parking, but also more landscape and as well fire department access. Yeah, and also it kind of unifies the building so that it's one shell versus two. We kind of had like a stepping effect where this kind of, from an energy perspective, puts it all in the same envelope. Okay, going? Okay. So I'll just blow through these plans. But basically, again, large outdoor air spaces for these lower units. We have moving up to level 2 balconies and then storage lockers and bike locker spaces. And then a typical floor plate as we're moving up with views of the channel and forest and Chief itself. The rooftop many I'll leave for landscape. Elevations, we had a comment about the east elevation of building 6 behind and how it was activated. We brought the materials down to the ground level so that it doesn't show it as a blank wall, but more including those corrugated metal fields and the cement panel, and also access to the storage lockers from behind. And then on the west elevation, we bring in the black band that comes across as highlighted as number 6. So it comes around the entire building. So it unifies both the west and east elevation. As we move through the south elevation, I just want to draw a note here for the amenity area that's down here. And it's access from the waterfront trail as a meeting area, which we'll speak about later. And again, the same color palette. We bring the band around the corner and then continue it along that west elevation. And we do punch outs in the corrugated metal as a way to break it up. It's not a solid piece. Moving on to building 7. Large outdoor areas. Again, this is the 2-story townhouse, but the 3-story can be accessed from the corridor as well. They're kind of sitting on each other from the courtyard area. The 3-bedroom is accessed as well. And then moving the final above, this is the 3-bedroom townhouse with a large outdoor patio that leads to a rooftop patio above with a skylight that shines down the stairwell. The courtyard elevation is quite muted. We're using those khaki browns, the cement panels and pewter and Arctic, and the white shingle in to break up the facade there. And then we have our kayak storage and sitting area, which I'll get to here in a minute. And the north elevation really shows the corrugated copper metal that we're using. We did switch from a black metal that we were using before. It was quite a big contrast. So this is a little lighter, doesn't feel as heavy. We also dropped the wall significantly. It just providing privacy between units, but also intrigue along that like important elevation. So here we are again. Then just in between building 6 and 7, we have a small amenity area met as a meeting point. Coming around the trails, the waterfront trail, you can stop, it's covered. There's an small indoor space as well. It also provides as a artery through the project. Moving on to the kayak storage, that heat treated wood is carried around here and we're coloring the concrete black to provide even more of a contrast between the two. Playful symbols to let you know that what's in there is kayaks. And then also above a sitting area, we consider it as like a nice meeting area. You can see people kayaking in the channel from here. You can interact with what the interest that's going on. And we drew a little red steel from Redbridge South. And then finally, what we're calling Lumina Lane is basically this roundabout where during the day, we sandblast the concrete to provide symbols and shapes. We're also silhouetting with the heat treated wood, local mountainside as mentioned, and landscaped with seating area as well. And then during the night, by using a aperture and fixtures, we can shine images on top of these sandblasted images. Originally, we thought we just do the same image, but we think we can have interesting relationships between two different things. Like if in the sandblasting you have a bike and then at night there's like a person riding the bike, so then they are interacting with each other. It's a great opportunity to bring some art into this roundabout and some intrigue into the project. Thank you.
Okay, now was there the landscape as well?
So it was in that USB stick, but can I just open it? Is that?
And I'll keep mine quite brief, understanding that we're a little
Sorry, I didn't leave
past
time.
I know everyone has had a chance to review the package. Would you like me to present or?
Yeah, Michael, have you had a chance to review this package as the landscape architect on the panel? I think your comments will be the most significant there.
Yeah, I did have a chance to review it. I would appreciate just a quick
flyby. Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. I'll skip this front page. What we're trying to do is we're trying to tie with the South development and just bring that through and really capture what the whole development feels like and be cohesive. So as we get here, we've got the multi-use path and we have all the ground level units opening up onto that, really creating that sense of community. There's also the connection that Joe talked about that comes down to that multi-use path. There's also, not shown on this diagram, but the next diagram, there's a couple of little lookouts there as well. And so that whole frontage gets activated. Joe also went through all of the circulation that happens around here. So all around the site, there's circulation, and there's 2 points that cut through for circulation as well. Unfortunately, because of the steepness of the site, not everything is accessible. There are stairs along some of the pathways and trails. However, once you're at the levels, it's accessible there. So the ground level units have the patio and the paving plane is all at the same plane. Multi-use path, it's all at the same plane. So there's accessibility there, but just not to certain circulation routes. One of the comments that Kerry asked you to comment on was on the far right-hand side, you can see that there's a little placeholder for the children's play. Because there's an intensive children's play area in the south area, we felt that this should be a little different. And so it's a calisthenics area, but kids just doing stuff and how we engage that. So that's where we want a little bit of feedback if there is time. We can go to the next slide. On this one here, it's the amenity level. And we have a series of outdoor rooms. We've got interior amenity and exterior amenity as well. So at the heart of it, there's a space where people can come together. There's a little bit of an artificial turf lawn there. And you could do things like cornhole or bocce or those engaging games. And then there's places and rooms off of that where you can be separate and you can break out into other things. There's urban agriculture there. So there's raised planters. All of the landscape here is on wood frame. So we have to be very mindful, and Michael, you probably noticed in the sections that a lot of the stuff is voided up. So even though we have a little higher planter, there's a lot of styrofoam in there. We can't exceed certain things on the wood frame. Next, please. Sure. And the plant palette is a bit of a rethink on what was done in the first phase, but generally it's being cohesive with that. The trees being removed are only what's necessary, and the replacement trees are beyond what is required for that to be offset. But we're trying generally to have a drought tolerant, bear aware plant list that looks forward to the future as well. I'll leave it at that, and we really look forward to your comments. Oh, I guess the one thing as far as being part of Squamish and being part of Redbridge, one thing that we did in the first phase is we used that Redbridge logo. And so the red in that is so vibrant, and we're using that for the site furnishings and some of the elements throughout as well. So that'll pull through into this development. That's it.
Thank you. I know it's a challenge to do that under a tight time. Okay, so advisory design panel, we'll try to keep questions and comments concise. We'll start with questions. I'm going to flip the order, but still put myself last. So Michael, you go first.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Actually, this question is just for Kerry to start off. The play element, is that supposed to be located within the Foreshore Park lands, or can that be anywhere within the Northlands development?
It's a great question. I believe the way it's written in the LDA, it does have to be in the district park foreshore. The land it's proposed in right now is also district owned land. So if that is the only place where we can fit something like that, I'm sure there's something that we can present to council to support that.
Okay. Yeah, just thinking about sort of along the foreshore, more linear play elements, and thinking about the Smoke Bluffs Park, and with like hollowed out logs or, you know, sanded root wads, or sort of like parkour balance type elements running along the foreshore, you can fit those in fairly narrow spots. I feel like where the multi-use path connects off at the Northlands site, there's sort of a bulbous shape where the Foreshore Park punches out a bit, and maybe there's a bit more room there to incorporate more of a structural element of play. But I think keeping the play elements natural, like rocks and logs and things like that, and letting kids sort of be imaginative about it would probably meet the aesthetic there, keep it natural, and also provide some elements. Even like sand pit areas, like naturally, you know, kids will bring their own play trucks and dig in it and spend a lot of time doing that sort of play. I think for the planting in the Northlands, I was just looking at the plant schedule and I saw that there was over 600 of the pyramid cedars. And I know you're using that for a lot of year-round screening with its evergreen nature, but it feels, are there other plants that you considered? Sorry, I realize we're supposed to be asking questions right now. What other plants have you considered? Why did you select so many pyramid cedar to separate the different lots? Were there any other plants you considered?
Taxus is always a go-to, and the cost of a taxus. Oh, thank you.
No, thuya. This is a thuya.
Yeah. No, what I was saying, I forgot to unmute myself. We always consider taxes, and due to the cost and the amount of screening that was required and having a consistent treatment throughout the development, that's why we would proceed in that direction.
Okay. And Kerry, does the wildfire landscaping management bylaw apply?
It does, Michael, and we haven't reviewed or provided that detailed comment yet, and we do plan to do that in our post-application review to the applicant, okay, with some of those specific planting details to comply to the wildfire.
So that'll change it.
And were there? It sounds like there is no way to get from the lowest point of the site to the upper site without stairs. Is that correct?
I'll turn that to you.
Yeah, I can talk to that. So as it stands right now, yes, and that's something we've been wrestling with. We want that to be the case. However, it is a 3-meter difference. We did calculate quickly how much that would be at a 5% slope from the roundabout up, and it would be about a 240-foot long ramp. But we're sensitive to it. We're thinking about it. We're open to suggestions.
Okay.
I guess one of the questions was, does it have to be? Yeah. Sorry, it's Scott Kennedy, Cornerstone. One of our issues was, does it have to be 5%, or does it just want to be a ramp? You know, because we could certainly do something a little bit steeper, and we would do that using a little bit of the municipal lands that were the parklands that were just right adjacent to the site. We could put a gradual something along there. So that's one thing we've looked at, but it would likely need to be a little more than 5%.
Fletcher.
Is that something that I can comment on, or?
Save it for comments there, Michael.
I think I think I'm done with my questions right now.
Okay, perfect. Celso?
Yes, thank you. I had a couple of questions for on the landscape and connectivity with trails and whatnot, but I'll let Michael do that because we have a very limited time to review such a complex application. Question to the planner or the architect. So the reduction for 2 meter setback along the cul-de-sac or roundabout is supported by the city. And the only reason there seemed to be some emphasis on the application and the report saying that that was due to the size of the garbage and recycling room. Just a quick background on that.
Sure. I can talk to that just about like why we're asking for a relaxation for the setback for the garbage room. Yeah, basically, I mean, I could pull up a plan here, but basically the way the access to the garbage room works now, we're required to be under 6% slope. And so in order to meet that, we had to ask for that relaxation. It's really more of an access for the garbage truck to get to there than it is just reorganizing the parkade itself. Yeah.
And I just want to clarify that it's just this is a comprehensive development zone, so the setbacks are designed a little differently. And this particular setback is just a small setback that was designed specifically for the southeast side of the property. And it does not reflect the setback that's for Scott Crescent alone. That one is still complying.
Yep, I could just say that the 2 meter setback was negotiated at the time of rezoning for the parkade. And originally we actually had the parkade entrance coming right off the cul-de-sac. But in order to try to give the wall a little more interest and also to kind of consolidate the number of curb cuts that we were doing, we decided to try to concentrate the road and the garbage and everything in one location. And we think it's a superior way to, and gives that wall a little more ability to be this kind of mural-like thing that we're doing.
Okay, second question is, I would think at some point the developer would be responsible for the landscape of the roundabout itself. But I want a confirmation of that and whether or not the treatment of that roundabout is subject or within the scope of this application or has been already approved. What I can see here is pretty much like a lawn or some grass, no major interesting things there.
I can clarify that the middle of the roundabout was part of the DP South application and part of the civil surfacing agreement detail. Any of the planting that is adjacent to this north site and adjacent to this wall is part of this review today.
Just on that sidewalk, right? But not
Correct.
the center of the roundabout.
Just the 2 meter area. Yeah.
That's unfortunate. Second, or actually I think it's the third. I agree with the comment number 3 here, 3.3, and I would like the applicant to give his rationale as to why shading the patios on building 7, right? On the townhomes was an option, meaning why, if there's a specific reason for wind, sun orientation, whatever it may be, privacy or whatever was the reason for that bulk separation between the vertical element between the townhomes.
Well, part of it is privacy, but part of it is also just we had this kind of dynamic element that had a bit of a slope, I think it gets a bit deceiving because it depends which direction you look at it because of the stepping of the townhouses. It's a fairly small element from one side, a little more substantial from the other side. And it's because we stepped the fronts of the townhouses to give them some interest. But we just wanted something a little more dynamic than a vertical wall. And we thought a little bit of a slope to it just gave it a little bit of interest. That's really where it came from.
Thank you.
Okay, Neil?
Thank you for the presentation, everyone, and thank you it's also for that question about the functionality of those vertical elements, because I was curious as well. So I wanted to ask if there are any outdoor amenities associated with Building 5. I didn't see any, but just wanted to clarify.
You go ahead.
The outdoor amenities, you can see that there is a space in between those two buildings there. And that space is a passive area where there's a lawn and there's a little stepping area through a mound where a tree is as well. However, the rooftop amenity is shared between the buildings. So all the other buildings do have access to that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And then this is maybe to the district. I wanted to clarify whether we're being asked to comment on the location itself of the calisthenics circuit.
Yes, please.
I was curious. I see there was a reference to an environmental report, and would like maybe to understand some of the restrictions there. If there's a setback or like a water level that is something that was considered, and if there was any recommendations made in that environmental report.
Well, I mean, we do have a riparian setback, and so we were encouraged to even fence it off in some areas, right? So it's intended to not enter that. It's to be not disturbed. We do have 3 observation points that are in the landscape plan to look at that area. And it is the subject of another DP that's coming through, by the way, the separate DP for this area. But those 3 observation points are intended to at least allow some engagement to the channel. There'll also be the focus of some artistic elements that we haven't quite confirmed what it's going to be yet, but there'll be a bit of an artist call for some elements that are related to those pieces. And so the way the setback was set back, we'd use the riparian setback that sets more or less the edge of the walkway. And then the walkway gets put in, and then there's a little bit of a setback beyond that just to where we begin our building. And those lands are all being dedicated to the municipality. So because we have this wide path, there's not a lot of area we could use for something in a play area, but we do have this right of way that comes down between Perry Beckham's place and this project. And we are providing access to Perry Beckham's place through that rear road. That's one of the agreements that we've made. But we felt that along there is an opportunity to do something. And we actually got a comment from the South site that, hey, it'd be nice to have something that's kind of a little more adult oriented, and walk the trail, do some outside calisthenics, and you see those kinds of parks in Vancouver. So we thought that was kind of a nice idea. And certainly kids can use that equipment as well, but it's going to be a little bit, at least the idea right now is that we would gear a little more to adults. And our thinking is we do have a very comprehensive play area over in the South side. And most of the users that would have their kids in this area will be residents of one of these 2 one of these 2 halves of the same project. And so they'll have access to that. Quite a nice area. It's got a teen lounge. It's got a nice room for parties. It's got an outdoor play area. So, we have got a very nice area for kids at the moment.
So it could potentially be located in that setback, but that's and that, I guess, just wondering what the restriction is there, but I think that's clear enough. So thank you for that. And yeah, that's all.
I'll just quickly clarify. So the foreshore is a 21-meter district parkland area. 15 meters of it is dedicated to riparian setback. So there's a really limited amount of area that we're going to be able to activate the space. And I think it's an important comment to highlight in these, especially when we're trying to activate the foreshore. In the regulation, the multi-use pathway has to be outside of the 15-meter setback for riparian. Those lookouts are definitely are supported in the setback as part of the environmental component, but I do not foresee a play area or a child space in that 15-meter setback. They would all have to be outside of that in a very kind of limited, narrow area.
Okay, that's a very helpful answer. Thank you.
And if I may, Michael's suggestions about having little side play was a great idea, and it can support that.
Okay, Beth?
Luckily, I think most of my questions have already been asked, so I don't have any questions to add. Thanks.
Wonderfully timed to keep us on track. Okay, I'll make mine quick. Did you explore a continuation of the phase 1 color palette?
Yes, we did. We thought we would just continue the same palette actually, and we thought we would just try and make a bigger spin on it, but we wanted to make it its own with like hints of it here and there, with landscape bringing those like that red throughout, and then we're doing minor aspects here and there of that like red metal we're through. But we think that if Redbridge South can be that red metal with wood accents, we can bring Redbridge North to be like that copper corrugated metal feel with those same little accents from South.
Okay, and then I noticed like the roof details to add some interest are fairly like on a unit basis. Did you explore a more unified, like going across more than one unit or multiple to have it just be a little bit less busy?
With the stepping, it became a little more challenging to do that, right? So
Yeah.
it was interesting because the south side originally was like that, and then we did decide to unify it a little bit more, and with mixed opinions, which is better. But this time, because of all that stepping, it became a little more challenging thing to do. So,
Yeah,
but it does open those units up to some very nice corners, right? So
Yeah,
I
makes a
think
ton of
there's,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. And then I noticed there's on building 7, there's like holes over top of or holes on the cover over top of the decks. I'm assuming they have a glass over top.
Skylit,
Yeah, it's just
skylit,
from
yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, that's all I've got for questions. To keep us on track, I think we'll just jump straight into comments. And Michael, if you could start us off.
Yeah. Overall, I think it's looking really good. I think my suggestion maybe to consider for where the calisthenics area is, and this also ties into some circulation and accessibility, would be if the MUP can, we have it kind of, the MUP goes all the way almost to the property line, but backing the MUP up to end sort of at that first viewpoint right there, and looking at that whole space as like a pocket park more as opposed to just like an individual calisthenics area. And you could have the path wrap around the perimeter, slowly going up, so you could gain elevation the entire path length, and then you could maybe look at some slope play elements like slides built into the slope or rubberized surface with some slope climbing elements, and that might help you gain some elevation on the path and creating a more cohesive play space that connects into the viewing area and feels more like a destination node at the end, as opposed to right now it feels a little disjointed about how it ends there. I think I'd like to have some soil volume calculations added for the trees. It was not clear if enough soil was being provided for all the trees. The wildflower seed mix, I noticed, had a lot of non-native species in it. I think this was listed for the foreshore park, and it might be good to consider working with a seed supplier to provide just native species to the Squamish area. I think the metal benches need to have backrests and armrests, at least some of them along the MUP for accessibility. And I'd already mentioned, it sounds like you'd be looking into the wildfire landscaping management bylaw. And I think there was the tree species selection along the foreshore park. It felt like there were a lot of cottonwoods and alders, which I think are going to come in on their own. They're pretty like weedy native species. They're very great for environmental reasons, but I think it might benefit to try to put in some other native species variety, like cornus or hawthorn or big leaf maple or birch or vine maple, just to get a bit more variety in there and kind of vary the height, because the poplar and cottonwood will just be a big wall. I think those are all my comments right now.
Great. Thank you so much. Celso?
Hi. So I have one main concern and two others. My main concern is this wall facing the roundabout, and I'm gonna list the reasons. First is the lack of accessibility. I mean, if someone, a handicapped person who is not coming by car or want to be dropped off at the roundabout, has to travel a few hundred feet all the way to the elevator of building, I think 6, to go up. And I don't know if for, you know, with access control and everything else, if he or she can do that. So I understand the additional cost of a lift at the front of the building, but maybe that even could be one of my suggestions to create more interest along that very long wall, which I have to be very careful here with our AIBC ethics of bylaws and whatnot, but without criticizing, just in a very practical way, I think I strongly suggest the applicant work with the planning department to have, again, more permeability through the parkade or something like that, that doesn't look much as a solid wall, regardless of the treatment that you're suggesting. And I appreciate, but I would suggest you work with planning. I feel it's very dry and very, very impactful to based on the length of that and the proportion of it. On the same aspect, to break down that wall and provide something a little bit more interesting, it's hard to give any suggestions, as the planning is asking us to do, especially for me, who is an architect. But I'm wondering if there's any way to create, if a lift is not, cost effective here, if there's any way to break down or make the steps wider, longer, whatever. I'm gonna give the concept of our friend Arthur Erickson at the courts, and how, in many other situations, ramps can be intertwined with very interesting landscape treated staircases that become a feature, as opposed to, my apologies again, this very dry wall along that roundabout. With regards to the vertical elements on the townhomes, it's if you mentioned privacy, as I could measure here, the height of that element is about 15 foot above the finished floor on the balcony. So not quite sure if that would be a reason for that. All I can say is I strongly recommend, it's a very heavy element. I was looking for a more specific reason, technical or constructability or anything like that. for those to be there in that shape and format, and also a dark color. But all I can say is I strongly recommend that to be revisited. And the other thing I'm looking at A 5.6, also 3.2, 3.1, that shows these staircases negotiating this grade differential, which I appreciate. But again, I think there's some serious habitat issues that need to be reconsidered here, as well as a better treatment to the ground level. Again, respecting privacy and so on and so forth between interior and exterior. But I suggest the applicant go back and work with planning on um, a better way to treat that very tall wall. I'm looking at A 5.6, which compounds like the issue with the stair, negotiating that differential, and this the fin, call it the angle vertical element, and it makes that area not really attractive. That is the worst of the three places I noted that by going on sheets A31 and A32, and this one on A56. Other than that, the other comments, I really don't have a problem with. I think it's interesting actually to not continue the same materiality and colors of phase one. I like the reference. Thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't get your name. From the applicant on that picture you show with the blues, and I think it does connect really well with the environment and the context. So I don't really have a problem with the materiality and breaking that from phase one. I'm gonna let Mio, we're running out of time here, so I'm gonna restrict my comments to that. That I'm sure she has some other stuff to talk about. Thank you so much for considering my comments.
Thank you, Mio.
Hi, thank you. I'll try to talk fast. Thank you, Michael, for that comment around using the grade for play. That seemed like a nice approach that I was kind of considering would be a nice option there in that calisthenic area if it were to kind of be integrated with that grade change there, or alternately getting more out of the footprint there by having some sort of really vertical element that would kind of be challenging for somebody to use continuously, such as like a rock climbing wall or something, not knowing what's in the south side. So something that could complement that could be another option there. So I'll echo the concern about sort of accessibility and having a entrance that would sort of prioritize anybody who has mobility issues, specifically to the south of that development. I think that it feels very like a barrier to anybody with mobility issues at this time, and so would love to see some design development there. Then for the amenity area, there's potential to add a little bit more programming there potentially, and I just say that as somebody who lives in a condo on a courtyard with a lawn and have not seen anybody except for crows using that passive green space. So potentially there's an opportunity to add something more with that could enhance habitat or food security or something. Agree that the east parkade wall is kind of monolithic there. So would ask that something happen there to break it up, potentially planting as trellises, carrying that heat treated wood around the corner there, or even using some of those interesting light projection elements there, something to animate that area and kind of bring a bit of life and interest. And then finally, I agree that the fins are quite heavy. They actually feel a little bit top heavy. So I wonder if there's the potential to maybe still use something similar, if that's desirable, and then having it used in a hierarchy of sorts, like maybe having a kind of fin that would relate to the entire building facade, and then having a more subtle version or reference to that between units so that the permeability could be, or the heaviness of it could be a bit lightened. And yeah, that's my comments in respect to time. Thank you very much for the presentation and generally support this project.
Thanks, Mio. Beth.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'm going to try not to mimic too much of what's also in Mio have said, because I do agree with a lot of the comments, and I'll let you know sort of which ones. And Michael, I'd like to kind of elevate your position about sort of dispersing the children's play element. I love that idea that it doesn't necessarily have to be contained in one place, but maybe the requirement can be met by breaking it up with elements that are natural, climbing boulders or climbing stumps or slackline, breaking them up and integrating them into the spaces, the unused spaces and along those trajectories. And that can kind of serve like maybe even to bridge child and adult play and calisthenics. So I kind of like that suggestion. So that's kind of in response to one of the elements that Kerry was very clear that they wanted feedback about. And do like and by the support of having like an adult calisthenic area as well. I think that's really nice. So not to let go of that. I'm just going to go back to the top. Material and color. I think your presentation about the rationale for material and color was very clear, and I appreciated the context, the historical context. There was a lot of thought that went into it. And I do also appreciate that it speaks to, but it stands apart from the previous development as well. And so therefore generally supportive of material and color as well. Scott Crescent frontage. I won't go into a ton of detail about this one. However, I do support taking another look maybe at this one. It is a very big, opaque element for sure. And it would be nice to see if there would be anything that could be done to break that down just a little bit more, maybe work in some elements of moving between the levels more in an accessible way. And I appreciate, I'm just seeing this very quickly, and I'm sure you've put a lot of thought into this, but it would be, I'm just going to elevate sort of Celso's comment about that it is a very big opaque wall. Maybe there's something that can be done to soften it with some more septhead-friendly landscaping, deciduous trees, something like this as well. But it would be nice to see maybe just a bit more of a back turn on that one. Building 7 design elements, I think same for me. My first thought when I saw the delineations between the townhouse units, they do feel very aggressive, almost in like a very aggressive feng shui kind of maneuver. And it would be interesting to see if the screening could be not eradicated, but lightened a little bit, which would kind of be a bit more in fitting with the natural screening that takes place in that area anyway. There's a lot of natural screening in the landscape, the deciduous trees sort of at the base of the climbing area. And it would be interesting to see if it could still be done just in maybe a little bit of a, like a lighter manner. And similar comments for building 5 and 6 ground floor. I really liked Mio's suggestion about maybe addressing it through landscaping, trellis, deciduous trees, something like that. I don't think it's really challenging to do through the building without just adding things for the sake of adding things. You know what I mean? So if there's ever a chance that landscape can help achieve that in a way that's safe for the space, I think that would be a wonderful option to look at. And that concludes my comments. Really thoughtful presentation. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So thanks so much for that presentation. Briefly, I think accessibility needs to be addressed within the project and kind of creating that sense of entry at that roundabout, some sort of way to draw people in. Maybe it's just not expressed well in the renderings, but I think just something to consider. I asked the question about uniformity across the two projects because when it comes to color, I wasn't actually, and I think I was on ADP when the first phase was presented for its last iteration. I wasn't a fan of it in plan, but I ride my bike along there. I live in Valley Cliff, so I'm kind of commuting around there. I think that site is really unique in that because it has the upper Mamquam blind in front of it and then a slope behind it with a bunch of deciduous trees, like it actually is really beautiful. And to not be the main star in that picture, I think is actually hopefully was the intent and is successful, I think, right now. And so I would have been fine had you proposed a continuation of that palette generally. I even would say that within the Redbridge phase 1, the red is so subtle right now, and I know the cladding's not fully done, but at least I feel like you could have enhanced that a little bit on the first phase. On the second, I jive with the copper again. Like when that upper Mamquam blind channel is low, you do get a lot of copper in the water around there, so I think that's a really nice reflection. And so I think with the fins within those townhomes, I could see light in them, but I'll probably, my opinion is probably different than the rest of the panel. Like I think that as a bold element, it's a good choice. It does look a little Jawa Sandwalker if you look at it from that angle. So, which again, I'm a huge fan of. So, you know, but I realize that that's not the, you're never really going to see that view because there's actually a building in front of it. So, maybe playing with that dimension a bit is worth doing, but, you know, generally I'd say the materials and the colors chosen in that area are successful right now. And then the only other thing I'll add is on the oceanfront park and the playground that we did, as a bit of an afterthought, we put in this like 5 foot by 5 foot little sand pile beside the carved canoe, and damned if there isn't a kid in there every single time I go to visit. And so it is amazing what you can do with a very small space if it's sand and a place to play. So I encourage you to think about that kind of across the entire site, because there will be a lot of children living down here. Yeah, that's all I have for comments. Okay, so I think I can present the options. I don't know if I'll read them again, because I think we can do that once. Does anyone want to move a recommendation while we are all here? Anyone feeling strongly about a certain recommendation one way or the other?
B.
B? Okay, Michael, do you want to move B for me, and I'll see if there's a seconder. Anyone want to second the B? Yeah.
I'll second that. Yeah, although it's 4:30, I know you have but we do need like 3 minutes to outline our recommendations. So,
yeah, Mio, Beth, I'm in agreement myself, but I just want to make sure you two. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Great. So Celso, kick us off then with a recommendation.
Breakdown, workaround, smoothen out a little bit or a lot on this wall along the roundabout. Looking to also softening, redesigning, looking at the real requirements for those things on the townhouse and try to make them a little bit more visually pleasant, together with revisiting all these access stairs between levels to make them a little safer, more interesting, and integrated with the overall development.
Awesome. Michael, just because you're not muted, I'll put you next.
Yeah, I think just making sure that the trees have enough soil volume where you've got them placed for the size and species, and consider adding more variety of tree species to the foreshore park, just to prevent sort of a uniform height of green trees. I know that sounds funny, but I think a more variation in the size and structure of that foreshore would be aesthetically and environmentally, but more dynamic.
Great. Neil, anything to add to that?
Nothing to add.
Okay. And Beth?
I think I would just also add that I would recommend to the district, I would really encourage the district to help look at some creative solutions to help with that accessibility issue with the ramp, looking at alternative options there, because it looks like you're trying really hard, and it would be nice to see if there was a way to find a solution to make that work, because I think it's an important element.
I don't have anything to add. Okay. All right. Well, that's that. So thank you very much for your time. And I think we can just jump right into a roundtable discussion if there is any. Yeah, Michael, who's your first? Then Celso is the second. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't see any conversation. Been a long, productive day. So thanks everyone for your time. Would anyone like to move to terminate? Beth, second. Celso, great. Wonderful. Thanks everyone. We'll see you in 4 weeks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.